Welcome to the Spawn Chunks, episode number 305 for Monday, July 8th, 2024. This is a podcast all about Minecraft, available on all of the major podcasting platforms. That includes YouTube. If you're enjoying the show, please consider subscribing wherever you're listening to this. My name is Joel Duggan, and joining me this week, filling in for the traveling Pixel Riffs, is friend of the show, fWhip. Hello, and welcome back, sir.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Can't get rid of me yet. I'm back again.
Happy to have you, and I really appreciate you filling in for Jonny so he can have a bit of a vacation and a trip with the family. If you are curious, fWhip's most recent visit to the Spawn Chunks was back on episode 231, where we discussed building stories in Minecraft. That was way back in February of 2023, so it has been a minute. If you'd like to follow what fWhip is up to, it's fWhip on YouTube and fWhip on Twitter, as well as fWhip on Twitch. So I'm sure you'll be able to track down where fWhip does the Minecraft things online. fWhip and I have also been talking about Minecraft in the background. We have the render distance, the extended version of the podcast that we give out to our patrons, and fWhip was kind enough to hang out. We were talking about mods and updating servers and how all that is going in 1.21. and the headaches in and around that. So if you'd like to hear more about that, check out the render distance. That's at patreon.com/thespawnchunks. And it does a great deal to help us out. We are a community supported podcast and we can't thank y'all enough. You also get benefits like the monthly Minecraft Hangout, which is usually on the last Saturday of the month. That is where we hang out with our patrons in the Discord and look at what they've been building in Minecraft. Lots of really cool stuff happening, of course, with the new blocks in Tricky Trials. So that's coming up later this month. We also have the quarterly hangout happening again later in July. We will need Jonny to be back in town for that. So whenever Jonny gets back and we have a chance to crunch the numbers, we'll go over those with our patrons and let you know how the podcast is performing, what the downloads are, how the new video version on YouTube is doing, all that kind of good stuff. Kicking us off in the quick login, as per usual, the guest goes first. fWhip, what have you been up to in Minecraft this week?
Well, recently we wrapped up the Minecraft SOS server, which I'm sure folks here are pretty familiar with Pixelriffs. Every time you call him Jonny, I'm just like, I know him as Pixelriffs. I know they're the same person, but I'm just like, Jonny Pix. It's just like always. I feel like for all the friend group, everybody like has their names for where they know each other, whether they're internet names or their real names or something like that. And I was like, I get one stuck in my head and I stick with that. But anyways, we wrapped up the Minecraft SOS server, which I was the admin behind. I was kind of like the one running it and planning most of the events, alongside with a few other people on the server who helped out a bunch with that, like Ollie, the Orion Sound. He was huge in helping out in the background. But since then, that ended, I think about a month ago at this point. I've just been living in my hardcore world playing single player Minecraft, which has been really fun because I have nothing else to worry about. I can just play in my single player world and just keep working on new builds. With 1.21 coming, before that, I was like, I want to do a new rendition of my end transformation, which I've transformed this massive tree. I realized I didn't send you a screenshot of that, so I'll send you one later. I tore down the entire end island and built a massive floating tree above it with end rods for the leaves of the tree, so it looks very ethereal.
Cool.
I went kind of inspired by, I always butcher the pronunciation of Yggdrasil from God of War Ragnarok, where you kind of use that to transport around and travel through the different dimensions. So I was using that as the inspiration and built this really cool thing out there. And then I was building up for kind of a round 2 transforming that, and went through the process of, I was like, okay, I want to build this giant glass nebula is what I was calling it. Basically just like all these different colors of glass mixed together and using glow lichen to kind of highlight in different things to make it really just like foggy effect to look like the tree has more substance, something that it's floating on. And using that was really cool, and it gave me all these projects of, I first built a giant factory that you could just put glass and you could put all the different dyes in, and using the auto crafter, it would just produce stained glass of any type. You just press a button and it starts, as long as you have glass and dyes in there, it would start producing that color of glass. So that was really cool to do. And then I was like, okay, now I need like nearly 100,000 glass to be able to create this thing. So I went through the absolutely painful process of getting, I think I got 40 or 48 or 30, I think 48 librarian villagers that all trade glass. And if you haven't specifically looked for librarian villagers who trade glass, that only comes in the third tier of unlocks.
Yeah.
So I went through well over 100 villagers that I turned into librarians, got to tier 3, realized they didn't have the trade, and then they went out to explore the desert. And then if they had the trade, they went into this massive library that I was building so that I could have this huge library in the middle of this desert city that I'm slowly working on, that is just full of librarian villagers that all trade glass as soon as you need. And going through each of them, I can get about 100 stacks of glass for every Minecraft in-game day. So it still took like 4 hours of trading to get all of the glass to be able to build the thing. So it took forever, but that's been really cool to do. That's been really fun. And then since 1.21, I've just been enjoying the trial chambers and building up a little village alongside that. And then going back to revisit and expand on this massive city project that I've been doing that is underneath a world tree. I really like building trees, apparently, that's sitting in the overworld. And then I have this giant city that's kind of sprawling out around it and just slowly growing all of those different things. So it's been really fun to just like fully dive into a build and really spend a lot of time just having fun building and really just making something that I'm really proud of. So that's been cool.
And you don't have to worry about interaction with server mates. Not that those aren't bad. It's just that there's a time and place for that. And if you really just want to hunker down and be creative, I often think about it like when I was spending a lot of time on personal projects as an artist, and you just wanted to put your headphones on, sit in your studio, and make the thing, and not necessarily have to sell the thing, talk about the thing, talk to friends about how their things are going. You're just like, I just want to make the thing. And with Minecraft, I find too, because of the like repetitive nature of gathering all the materials, it can be really cathartic when you've got a big project of your own, and the only thing you have to worry about is just like the infrastructure that you might need, perhaps like you said with the crafter, and then just gathering all of the stuff that you need to do. And my brain was going, did he go and collect all the sand, or did he go with the villager route? And I've seen some data packs recently that add sand to husks for renewable sand, because I think people are just tired of not being able to get the sheer amount of glass that they want for projects that are as big as the ones that you've been taking on. And there is something really cool about building oversized organic structures like trees, or like building big flowers that look like you've been shrunk in Alice in Wonderland, that kind of stuff. There's just something really fantasy iconic about those kind of things. I think you were a World of Warcraft player as well, and so
unfortunately still am.
Oh, still are. Okay. I fell off years ago, but the tree, the big tree in that game, Teldrassil, I think is the name. And that was always a really cool story moment, event, location, like all that kind of stuff. I just really felt like it was part of a cool world, and how like the roots go deep and how it's all magical. And I read a bunch of the World of Warcraft Chronicle books that kind of went through the history of the world and the history of all that kind of stuff. And it was really cool to see how tightly woven it was all, together. And I think that's the thing, like when you have a big tree like that in Minecraft, or a big structure of any kind, whether it's a mountain that you've done by hand, anything like that, just it feels like it adds just as much below the ground as it does above the ground, even though you've not built anything, because we all know, like, if that tree is that big above the ground, then the root structure would be just as large. So it kind of lets your imagination just kind of like go down and think about what might be below the surface, even though you don't have to build it or see it.
Yeah, I've had a few times where I've just been like in an open area, and a lot of what I used for the trunk of the overworld tree was acacia logs and tough blocks. So I've kind of make what almost looks like a boulder out of those, just a little distance away from the tree a few times. But it's the same blocks that were used for building the tree itself. So you can either walk by and think like, oh, that's just like a darker gray rock that's out here randomly. But if you connect it to the tree, you're like, oh, that's part of the root network that's stretching away. And it just kind of adds that, like, oh yeah, that, like you're saying, like everything underground that the eye can't see, or just have that like, wait, this is here, that thing's all the way over there. That means they have to connect somehow, and it kind of adds that extra level to it. But yeah, everything that my like happy place in Minecraft building is like a medieval fantasy world of it's more on the medieval theme, but allowing for a lot of those fantastical elements to come in. And I think a skill that I really want to grow more is like making organic buildings. And the entryway for that for me was really learning how to build trees and doing that. And a while ago, I've fallen off for a bit. It was earlier this year, but I was trying to build a custom tree a day. So I'm slowly working on a plot world and like a super flat world. There's just all these plots of different types of trees of different sizes and types and styles and everything. And it's been a fun challenge, and it's definitely something I want to get back into to kind of keep on that organic building theme.
I've been really sticking on the medieval fantasy stuff as well. That's what Westall has been for me for the longest time, and I'm actually itching to get out of it because I'm getting one close to finishing, which is good because I do want to move on and do other things. But I think I'm going to be
Mm-hmm.
flipping the other direction. I think I'm going to be heading into a sci-fi kind of smooth, white,
Okay.
crisp, straight lines. Not a lot of subtle textures unless I really want them for landscaping. I mean, there's also alien landscapes, so I can do some texturing and some
Mm-hmm.
cool stuff, but maybe it's going to be purple grass. Like, I mean, just fun stuff that I can kind of come up with on my own. And it's one of those things where I also want the challenge of trying to do something in Minecraft that might be a little bit harder to do. I also anticipate that to be frustrating on some levels because sci-fi you want a lot of curves and there's not a lot of
Yeah.
curves that you can do in Minecraft. And but the medieval fantasy, I mean, Minecraft lends itself so well to all of that, with all the different wood and stone
Mm-hmm.
textures and stuff like that. So I've been working actually on Westhill this week. I didn't have a big plan, like I didn't go in with a new build. I recently finished a pumpkin farm, and what I do have though is an in-game book that is my basically left to do for West Hill book, and in it was the green spaces out front of the town. I've got this big curtain wall to the north, and there's these big grassy plains that are big enough that they need something in them, but are also not a place where you're going to put a house or anything too tall because like it would defeat the purpose of having the curtain wall if someone can climb up something and get access to the town or even just be high enough to shoot arrows, whatever. So I just tried to lean into some inspiration and tried to lean into what I think it could use visually. And I ended up doing a custom tree along the West Road. And it sort of broke up the view as you come in from the west. Everything was very, very flat. And this was nowhere near the curtain wall, so it made sense that a tree might grow there over years. And with no reason to cut it down, then it'll just end up, kind of cropping out the side of the road or popping up and growing in a way that, like if we could do it, have the roots like break the stones of the road a little bit, the kind of thing that you'd see in a sidewalk in modern day. And so I
Mm-hmm.
added that, and it was just a small thing, so it didn't take very long. But because of its location, it also just kind of informed the next little inspiration, which was a little path that went from the road down to the marsh. I mean, could it be for catching frogs? It could be just a simple place to look and have a cool view of West Hill. Doesn't really matter. It was just nice to have something to start to subdivide this green space, because if I don't
Yeah.
break it down into little purpose built areas, then it's just going to be this large space of grass where I put like random bushes and texture, and it's fine. It's just time consuming and it's not all that interesting. So I'm at that battle where I don't want to put anything that's going to distract from the main attraction, which is of course the main gate for West Hill and the big curtain wall. But I also don't want it to be just flat and untouched by the player. I kind of want to comb the area and add in a bunch of different things. And that's
Mm-hmm.
where I went with the bigger space. The northeast lawn, as we call it, is a much larger area, and so I try to I went with like the logic route of like, okay, if I'm a pedestrian coming out of Westill and I need to go east, I'm not walking all the way to the crossroads and then taking the main road all the way around. There's a real good chance that people on foot would just walk across the lawn. And so I added in a curved path that kind of subdivided it. So immediately I've got something interesting that breaks up the space. And then the larger green spaces that I have to deal with have just got cut in half. So it's going to be a lot easier, I think, to put like bushes or pieces of stone or things at the base of the wall, and then I can go to the other side and just throw in some grass. And I've been doing some stuff where I sink the leaf blocks into the ground, and it sort of looks like
Okay.
thistles or mossy stone, or like there's just this kind of, it looks impassable, like it doesn't look comfortable to walk on. So then it makes
Mm-hmm.
sense that there's a path there and a road there, and then no one probably walks across this because it's probably just a bunch of uneven ground and kind of a good way to twist an ankle, that kind of stuff. So that's really all I accomplished this week. They are time consuming because of all the texturing, and trying to get the paths to curve right and make them feel like this is the natural path a person would walk. And then you've got the terrain changes. I try not to like clear cut the terrain in terms of flattening things out. I really try to leave the topographical changes that Minecraft has there as best I can, unless it's something really, really ugly or problematic. And so then you've got
Yeah.
challenges of like the curve going up a block or up 2 blocks. And what does that look like? And how do you, make that transition work well? So it's always good practice, but it's not like super exciting stuff like creating a new farm or new building or decorating the inside of something. But these are all details I feel like need to happen in Westdale in order to move it forward and for me to like feel good about checking the box, because I am a detail oriented person and I don't want Westdale to just feel like a build that's been plunked in the landscape. So even though Westdale is 90% finished on the inside, I still have quite a few things to do around the outside edge of it to try to make it look like it's blended into the surrounding countryside.
I don't know if you remember this, but this popped in my head as soon as I saw the screenshots that you shared. But back in like, I think 2019, early 2020, there's this Minecraft building phase where everybody's like, oh, what do I add here along the road that I'm building? And the first thing that popped in my head was every single person would comment like, have you ever thought about adding a wagon that's tipped over on its side and everything spilled out? As soon as I saw what you had shared, I was just like, that was the first thought that popped in my head. I was like, we could have a tipped over wagon here. I don't know.
Well, that's one of the things that I wanted to change. There's a series of roads that like paths that kind of like cut the crossroads, and some of them feel too straight and too manufactured. And I think maybe what I'll do is I'll remove one of the paths entirely and just have the whole corner of that section of road just be dirt, as if it's just a whole bunch of stuff that wagons have torn up. And I wasn't going to do overturn, but I was going to think about maybe putting like a wagon from somebody that's trying to sell their fruit or vegetables on your way into town, kind of like that, almost like a corner store from like a medieval fantasy world, or maybe I could come up with something more interesting, like an apothecary cart or somebody shilling their potions of questionable origin and results. That could be kind of fun too.
Yeah, see if they can sell it outside before the guards at the gate take their tax when you're entering, type thing. Yeah,
that's a good idea too. I feel like with that, I always get caught up in the data pack stuff, though. I want to put those kind of details like the armor stand things and those little like floating potion bottles, and I know that that's going to be a restriction depending on how we move forward with the server. So I'm trying to also not make a lot of work for myself in terms of the admin stuff on the back end, but we'll see. I've done a couple of carts recently and I've been pretty happy with the way that they've turned out. A combination of like, of course, signs, hanging signs, and spruce trapdoors, everybody's best friend when it comes to building stuff like that. And we'll see what I can come up with.
No, I've been loving following along and hearing the updates and everything. I haven't been able to catch a stream of you working on it for quite a while, but it's always so fun to see the little additions here and there every week that you have going on the build. It's really turning into something super special.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate that, especially coming from you, someone that puts in a lot of time in big worlds and big builds. It's the first thing that I've ever attempted in Minecraft at this scale, and it's been 3+ years of working on it. But the last, I want to say the last year, it's just been really satisfying. Like every time I finish something, it adds to that satisfaction of like, this is really coming together. It's really starting to feel not finished, but like I can see the finish line, and I'm enjoying the process. I'm trusting the process, and really looking forward to checking it off.
I feel like for me, I get to those points when I'm nearing the end of the project where I'm just like, maybe I could find something else to do here just because I enjoy everything I did so much. So I want to like, I'm just going to walk around and see another project I can find. Yeah, I definitely like need to do something. Like I don't need to move up, and just like finding like reasons to just like exist in the area, and mostly just to enjoy what I made.
Yeah.
And the little things I add in are like so small here and there, but I'm just like so slow about doing them just so I can keep wandering around and seeing everything I made. I think it's such a fun phase, and it's always bittersweet to be like, oh no, I'm actually done. Oh, okay, I guess I need to move on. Something that I've really attached to recently in builds that I've done is every region, maybe not every building I make, but every region, at least in my single player world, always has something to go back to there. So whether there's a farm or whether there's like, I'm working on a new village project right now that I've never gotten all the banner patterns before. And so I was like, this could be kind of fun to go get all of them. And so out in this village, not only do I have a bunch of cartographers that sell like trial chamber maps if I ever need to go exploring to those, but I've also put a bunch of shepherd villagers out there with a whole like barn around them, and inside the barn or house that they have is like all of the different banner patterns and everything. So like I keep exploring back to it, so it kind of helps hit that phase of like, oh, I finished something, and but I have a reason to keep going back. It's not just like, oh, I'll go if I want to see the builds. Like I have like a natural reason to go over there and do stuff, which is fun.
A lot of our builds on the server are like that, going to the gold farm or going to Dartmouth
Mm-hmm.
Meadows to go to the iron farm, and you got to travel through the nether hub to get there. So you can see all these big important builds as you travel to go to different locations, usually to collect blocks from a certain farm. I don't have anything functional in West Hill. Like it's all just build and
Yeah.
manual storage. Like it's not even an auto storage sorter. Like there's not a lot of that going on. So there's a chance that I might need some grass or dirt or something, and boy, do I have a lot of that around. So, if that's the case, if I ever like, well, I'm landscaping something, because my plan for the sci-fi area is to put it on a mushroom fields island,
Oh
and
yeah, yeah.
if I need grass or if I need dirt or if I need something like that, I'm going to go right where to go to get it, because man, I'll be doing myself a favor because I'll have to store less of it. I'm a bit of a digital Minecraft pack rat when it comes to that kind of stuff, but I feel like you would also understand that and know the value of keeping as much as you can.
Yeah, I'm working on a giant landscape project right now, and I thought I was at one of those points where I'm like, oh, I'll never run out of dirt. I have 20 double chests full of dirt and then another 10 full of grass blocks. Of course I won't run out. I ran out. I have no dirt. I'm now digging up some more because I'm clearing out of space, and I've filled a few shulker boxes. But yeah, no, I completely ran out. I've now in my world placed over 300,000 dirt blocks, and I ran out of everything those in my storage.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
wild.
I'm at this stage where everything that I pick up that is not a seed or a random flower, because I have flower farms and can get all those super easily. If it's a full block, I'm keeping it. Whether it's a random like copper or coal ore block or whatever, like everything's staying in there. I'm very thankful about that because I'm working on a new build right now, and I love to use coal ore to texture in between going from like acacia logs, coal ore, and then going into like a stone block. It's a really clean transition from a distance.
Yep.
And up close, it looks a little weird having the ore in there, but from far away, it looks really good. And then I'm working on a big cliff face right now, and I needed like almost a shulker box full of coal ore blocks to be able to do the thing. And going out and mining those like on the fly, that would suck.
Oh
But
yeah.
thankfully, I had them all in random barrels, so I'm good to go.
Yep. I keep all that kind of stuff too. Anything that's little odds and sods, blocks that you don't need a lot of, but you absolutely
Mm-hmm.
know you will need a dozen at some point, and I keep it all for sure. There's a joke
Yeah.
actually on my streams, like when I'm filling in a hole or digging out a space, if I see coal ore, I'm just gonna dig it up. Like I can't.
Yeah.
It's like when people see diamonds, they absolutely have to take them, even though if they've been end game forever and they don't need them, they just take them anyway. I'm like that with coal,
Mm-hmm.
and it served me because I've used it for decorations around like hearths inside to have like soot or coal bits on the floor.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they're really really helpful, and I really need to get better at using the ore blocks in landscaping. I've done it a little bit around some of the rivers, like with some iron ore to kind of make it look like there's some sort of deposits around. But
Oh yeah.
I find it really effective when people like you or B Dubs or other folks that I follow online that use at scale like a really big cliff. I find that if you're doing something large, you can get away with a lot of different blocks that you wouldn't normally think
Mm-hmm.
work in landscaping to help create that gradient. Like I've even seen coal ore next to diorite sort of work in a way, because diorite has those dark flecks, and it depends on what somebody's
Yeah.
doing and what the layers are. But yeah, it's something that I'm hoping to do a little bit more of. But I'm not sure how a sci-fi area is going to let me use coal ore, but we'll see. Never say never, right?
I've been recently playing around Cyberpunk 2077, and the game, I feel like I always have to preface this with the Minecraft audience. It's not family friendly at all in the slightest of a video game, but it is a fantastic game if you're looking for building inspiration for like those sci-fi, fantasy,
Yeah.
cyberpunky, not fantasy so much, but like futuristic themes. And like they go for the very like grimy way and a lot of those like messy gray tones, and I feel like you could throw a lot of the ore blocks in there and get them to work pretty well. So if you're going for the super clean sci-fi, probably not, but if you're going for like a messy theme, I think you could get it similar to what B-dubs has been doing in their cyberpunk city on hermitcraft, like he's a genius when it comes to texturing and how to use different blocks. So he'll figure out a way. It'll trickle down to everybody else, but he'll figure out a way.
Moving into the news this week, it is a light news week as most of the Mojang crew is on probably summer vacation, or at least enjoying a well-deserved break after the release of Tricky Trials. There are a few things going on, though. The team has updated the Minecraft key artwork. This was an article published on the 1st of July this year. Quote, we're making updates to the Minecraft artwork that features on the game boxes, digital storefronts, and on our own PC launcher. It's worth noting that the artwork is not arriving alongside a gameplay update. Everything featured is already waiting to be discovered or crafted. We hope that you like the new look, which will be rolling out soon. I believe it's already out on Bedrock, and you can look for it soon, probably on the Java launcher as well. The summer celebration has also returned. That was an article published on the 2nd of July. The summer celebration is back between July 2nd and July 16th. You can try different ways of playing Minecraft with deals and discounts at the Minecraft Marketplace. Snag a free world based on Tricky Trials. Chomp down on a Pac-Man DLC. Play through 2 epic starter packs and take on new quests with up to 75% off. Every day between July 2nd and July 16th, 2 new content packs will be discounted at 75% off for 24 hours. So keep your eye on the Minecraft Marketplace for some fun summer sales. As someone that's not steeped in Bedrock, I mean, I get my news, as I research it for this show. It's nice that they have this kind of stuff happening during the lull between like the last release, whatever the next snapshot or development cycle might be for Java Minecraft, and then subsequently Bedrock as well. They have these marketplace releases where you've got the Pac-Man DLC, stuff based on Tricky Trials. I'm not really familiar with like what is involved in the content pack, but if people are looking to spruce up their Minecraft experience and just looking to try some new things, and if they have not always been crazy about the fact that they're obviously something they have to pay for in the Minecraft Marketplace, up to 75% off, that's not anything to ignore. That is quite a big deal, especially if they're already on the cheap side. Like you could be looking at a couple of dollars just to kind of get some new Minecraft content. Do you ever spend any time in Bedrock, fWhip?
I have not been on Bedrock since the mob vote last year.
Okay.
Because I had to get on the server for something I was working with Mojang on. I don't really pay too much attention to Bedrock either, to be honest. I keep up to date on like some things that are going on, some of their major news coming out, but I feel for me that like when I'm playing Bedrock, I feel slippery. Like my character feels slippery compared to if I'm playing Java, and it just like it feels off. Like I'm like this to me, I'm just like this isn't the Minecraft I know. Like I know vast majority of people play on there, but I'm like so ingrained in the Java side that I don't really do it. I will say the one thing that did pique my interest was it came out a week or two ago. There was somebody did like this full revamp of survival and made it compatible with random seeds and everything and just new different types of generation. I'm blanking on the name of it right now, but they did a full overhaul of like how you play survival, all the animations. Think of like if you've heard of the Fresh Animations resource pack on Java, think of that like to the extreme because Bedrock has so many more capabilities on it. And so I saw a lot of that and people are saying it was pretty cool. So I looked into that a little bit. I didn't end up playing it, but I saw a few videos and I was like, like if Bedrock did more content like that, more things like that on the marketplace, like I could be interested in checking those out because that kind of was hitting on RPG Explorer vibes in there. But yeah, I find the content produced on the marketplace isn't content for me, but it's a content for a lot of people that love it, and that's awesome. I'm glad that it exists, but I'm very much happy. Like as much as you're saying like all this is coming out in this lull period, I feel like I'm like 1.21's here. I don't play snapshots. I look at the news, but I don't touch them on purpose. I won't allow myself to boot them up. So when it finally does get here and I finally do update, I'm like, I got months of content of things to explore and all these things to really dive into and everything, and like new builds to make with the new blocks and everything like that. So yeah, I feel like I'm not really in a phase too often where I'm like looking for more things to add. And if anything, I play modded Minecraft every once in a while, and like 2 months in, I'm like, yeah, I want to go back to vanilla. Like I enjoy that more. So Yeah. It's exciting seeing all this stuff they're adding, though. It's really cool.
I find sometimes with vanilla Minecraft, you'll end up being inspired by modded. Like you'll go play modded thinking you want to break.
Mhm.
You'll do it for couple weeks and then you're like, oh, I could do this in vanilla, or I could take this idea and actually this mod makes it kind of like easy, but I could make it look
Mhm.
interesting and probably achieve the same thing, in vanilla Minecraft. So yeah,
Yeah.
I hear you there. I think the other thing too for me with Bedrock is the last time I tried it, it was probably to talk about it on the show, and I played it on Xbox, and so the controller experience was not the best. And I've had several people reach out since and be just like, "You should really try to play it on PC." And even though it'll feel different, at least it'll be
Mhm.
a little bit closer to Java. We were just talking last week on the show that a lot of content creators tend to play on Java because of the control, because of the content creation tools like Replay Mod, Lightmatica, those kind
Yeah.
of things that you have access to when the mods are, up to date. And I think that's one of the reasons why when I'm talking to other people in the same space that I am about Minecraft, we don't tend to talk about Bedrock, is because it's mostly Java because of the tools that are available. And I have the same sort of opinion that you do. Like the content doesn't look like it's geared towards me, so like I don't tend to be pulled towards it. But I have been tempted sometimes. I'm a big Star Wars fan, and so when I see like a Star Wars DLC, or there was a Jurassic Park DLC one time that looked really cool, and
Yeah.
it's just that kind of stuff. I mean, it would be not something I would spend a ton of time in, but I think it would be good for a lark. Good for a little nostalgia, a little bit of fun.
Yeah. I know a few people get those, and it's like 2 or 3 hours of content for like $4 or $5. And I'm like, that's a pretty good deal. That's like a few hours entertainment for a few dollars. Yeah, sure.
I feel like the fresh animations thing really speaks to me because I have a background in animation. And so when I
Hmm.
see Minecraft characters where the models haven't really been changed much, but the animation is like dynamic and fluid and really gives them weight and personality, I think it makes the game look so much more modern. I really wish that I could use that fresh animations pack. I think I found a way to do it with Fabric, but
Yes.
it was also it caused a bunch of frame issues, and so like it's either my PC is a little bit old or the server just can't quite handle it. Whatever it was, it was not quite as cool of an experience as I was hoping. And so for
Hmm.
performance reasons, I think I had to axe it. But I really want to give it another go because it's something that I think looks really really fun, and it affected how I felt about my world that I've been in for years and years and years. The Citadel is 7 years old, and it affected how I felt about it. Like it felt new, it felt fresh. Speaking of fresh, the key artwork I think is now out on the Bedrock launcher. We might see it on the Java launcher soon. It's only been a week since the article was posted. I think it's cool that they're keeping up with the new art. I don't think there's anything that's going to make me change how I feel about Minecraft by the way that they changed their marketing material. It does include some of the newer fan favorite additions to the game, like cherry groves, bees, allays, frogs. There's an axolotl. There's a little bit of a lush cave. It also includes some of the new player skins that they added recently in the last year or two, which I think is cool because it adds some representation to Minecraft on the cover art that I think is important. But I mean, I haven't seen any big to do about it. Like they announced it. People maybe have noticed it, but I'm not seeing anybody saying like this is amazing or this is terrible. Like I think it's good. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's worth noting because it's going to change the way that things look. And I find that I'm such a creature of habit when I go to stream and launch Minecraft. If something on that launcher is different, I will absolutely notice. Like, oh, it's a new update screen, or like when they switched to having like the cherry groves when that update came out. Like that kind of stuff is really noticeable and fun. Um, I don't really play any of the little mini games that they put in the launcher, but like again, I'm not the audience for that.
I've been loving seeing what they've been doing for the new art. I like part of me wishes there was a way to access that as like a texture pack in game, but I know so much of that is
Totally.
like post production rendering and everything. But I just think that clean style they go for is so cool. Just the slight disconnect from it being in Minecraft versus like what their art looks like to me sometimes is a little off of like this is not quite what we're getting in game, but regardless, I love what they do show, and it seems like the way they have all of the rigging done for the mobs that they have in there, the characters that they have in there. Like one day, I kind of hope some of that is somehow moved in. Like if they did, as we're just talking about fresh animations, if they did like a whole update geared towards updating animations of mobs and the players and making them just look a little bit more natural, less rigid, because like the Minecraft character, like the characters we play as running around, like the legs and everything and their arms, like the torso never moves, but your legs are doing full 180-degree turns forward and back. And so It'd be cool if they'd take this key art and like be like, maybe some of this will come into the game. But regardless, I think it's so cool like what they're doing with adding the art and adding all those different ways. Like it definitely gives this like come and explore this vibe. Like come and see all these fun little things that you can find inside the game. So it's cool seeing how much like care they're putting into it and how much the team is really trying to think about how they can keep increasing or improving the Minecraft experience.
I don't remember who it was, but when I was searching for some new mods a while back, I stumbled upon someone that was looking at different rendering mods and also different textures. And one of the things that they had was not for regular gameplay, but for their shaders, was a shader and texture pack that made their screenshots look like Minecraft trailer releases.
Yeah.
And it was really cool because it kind of gave that official Minecraft vibe to this world that they had built.
Yeah.
Moving on to chunk mail. If you would like to email the show, the email address is spawnchunkmail@gmail.com. Please keep those emails short and to the point. It helps us include them in the show. This week we have one from Thor of Asgard, Calcite and Chalk. Hello, Pix and Joel and Whip. In episode 300, I was caught by two ideas of chalk as a new building block with a more pastel palette and renewable calcite. I was wondering if bone blocks could be used to make chalk by grinding it somehow, or perhaps bake it or smelt it. Take the bone blocks down into calcite as a renewable way of obtaining the block. Love your show. Thor of Asgard burnt his fingertips trying to bake calcite. I mean, for Thor, calcite should probably be smelted in the heart of a dying star, but we'll give you a pass because it is Minecraft and we don't really have access. To bring people up to speed, if you have not checked out episode 300 of the Spawn Chunks, that is a massive video celebration. It's a 3-hour podcast, and we did a huge section of Q&A. This was a question from Grand227 during that episode, and the question was, what new colors would you like to add to the game, and what would they be crafted out of? For example, maroon dye from beetroots and indigo from smelting ender pearls. The one that I came up with was chalk. So this is Thor of Asgard's response to something that I had said. And Jonny chimed in and said that he wanted the pastels in the chalk as well. I think grinding bone blocks is already sort of what we do to make bone meal. At least that's how I think about it in my head. And subsequently white dye. So it's kind of already in the game. I like the idea of bone blocks as an organic material being turned into something like calcite, because calcite, for folks that don't know, is like a form of limestone. So it already has like that kind of organic way of being formed from like minerals over the centuries being leached out of different things. My idea behind chalk was that it would be naturally found in the world, perhaps just one or two colors depending on the biome. It doesn't all have to be white. I could see like pink chalk maybe happening in like a savanna or maybe a badlands or something, although that might be hard to differentiate between terracotta and chalk. Real world chalk, as I mentioned, is a form of limestone, so it's sort of already occurring in the game in the form of calcite. So I can imagine just taking calcite and crafting it into chalk would make a lot of sense. However, I'm of the mind that I don't want to make easy button in Minecraft. I don't want to just take calcite, add dye to it, and get chalk. I think that one of the ways that could be done could be something like the way that we use water to make mud or to help make more dripstone, like something a little bit more involved. If you're going to add like new pastel blocks to the game, I think having players create farms or deal with their own patience as they wait for more stuff to come in and form as it slowly drips from the ceiling, that kind of mechanic could be more interesting. I like the concrete mechanic. Like I think it is laborious sometimes, but I do feel like it does add a different flavor to that block. It's different than just putting stuff in a crafting table and having it come out the other end, especially now that we have the crafter block. Because if concrete was complex but something that we did in a crafting table outside of just adding the dye to it, then all of the crafting and concrete making machines that people have come up with would be completely useless. If the crafter did it, it would just be a make go button for the crafter. And so I think that keeping some sort of renewable calcite mechanic more interesting would be a good way to go. I'm curious, fWhip, for you, right back to the root question, new colors that you'd like to add to Minecraft. What's top of mind when you think about that?
My initial response always when I get asked this is some form of a true like blue color and purple colors as far as like kind of filling out those extra ones. Because for blue, you kind of have lapis or you have packed ice, blue ice, or you have to jump to the coppers and the prismarines, which are more of like a turquoisey,
Yep.
kind of moving more in the cyan vibe. So they don't really fit. So we're kind of missing. And I mean, you have the concretes and the terracottas, but those are only full blocks. And like they don't, to me, really hit on the mark of what I'm looking for. So I think like a blue and a purple, like that's very much missing. I would have before said pink until we got cherrywood. I think that's a really, really good one to have filling in. And then also, I think more on like the yellows that because bamboo kind of does it. It does a good job. I really like bamboo blocks, but it's not really a full true yellow. It's very muted. And then I guess also for the other side of bamboo, if we had like a full green palette for the bamboo log before it gets stripped down, like that would also be really, really cool. Um, so it seems like there's a lot of easy kind of like easy wins that they could go for there, just adding those new ones. My guess is that we're gonna get that blue and that purple wood whenever we get an end update. Like that's what I'm
Yeah.
holding out for here. The same we got the nether trees. Like I'm sure the end is just gonna add to whenever. Fingers crossed, there's an end update. Like that'll just be adding in all these like missing wood color palettes that we don't have. Like that would be really cool. That would be something that I'm looking forward to a lot. I love the idea of the pastels. And I know a few friends who, if they saw that, like Catherine, for example, she would just be squealing in excitement if they announced that they're adding chalk pastel colors of all the different types. Like sometimes those concretes are a little too bold, and sometimes the terracottas aren't really true to the color that they say they are. At
Agreed.
least in my opinion. So having like a pastel chalk that's like really true to like that pastel color palette, that could be really fun to work with. I feel like that would really lend towards a lot of the other blocks that we have in Minecraft, where if you go to the concretes, they're just such a bold color compared to what else is in there, that for the concretes, I feel like I only use light gray, white, and gray. Like I don't really use the others unless I'm really trying to throw in like a full pop of color, and they're not in my everyday like building palette toolkits, I guess you could say.
I used a lot of concrete when we first started the Citadel because it had only been out for a year, and I was making a lot of kind of rustic looking redstone farms, but I would highlight what they were by what they were made out of. So the sugarcane farm had green concrete platform highlights. You know, the netherwort farm was all red on the edges of all the platforms, and it had like logs and water flumes and things like that. So it did look kind of rustic at the same time, but I really used the bold colors to kind of, so you can see from a distance, like which one's the pumpkin farm? It's the orange one. Like just go towards the large orange building, you will find the pumpkins. And of course, when you can see the pumpkins through the glass and stuff, it also makes them look cool because of the platforms being the same color. But I agree. I think that the high contrast of the primary colors of concrete can be very difficult to work with sometimes, and especially if you want it to look dirty, like you're stuck putting like diorite, or I mean calcite's not bad, I guess, when you put it next to white concrete, but I find that white concrete can be very blue, and then the other whites in the game are usually pretty warm. Like quartz and white concrete, you'd think that they would go better together, but they really don't. They can be very hard to match.
Bad.
You kind of have to have some sort of like higher contrast block, like a dark gray or something in between them, and then like the quartz will still kind of read as white as long as it's not right next to something else that's like really pale blue white. It's like the difference sometimes between like a tungsten bulb and an LED bulb, you know, and as different households, as you switch over, you just like, I never realized how yellow that light is until I bought a white bulb from Walmart. You're like, what happened? And I find that that's some of the inconsistencies in Minecraft. How do you feel about finding renewable calcite? Like, do you find that you're always on the hunt for that? Do you find you have enough of it?
I feel like it's one of those blocks that I just forgot existed because I can't be bothered to go and find it. Like if I find it on a geode, I'll throw it into the next build I'm doing if I bother to gather it. But having some way of having renewable calcite, I would love. Like that would be so cool. I think it would have to be something pretty efficient though to be able to get a lot of it, or at least I like like you said, like the dripping, like the dripstone mechanic for that. Like I love that you can get like pointed dripstone from the dripping point, but it's still so slow that I would say like 99% of the dripstone that I get is from villager trading. So like when calcite wasn't added as a thing that you can buy from a stonemason villager the way that dripstone was, I was so surprised. I was very, very surprised that they didn't do that. So I think it could be cool to have more renewable ways that are actually working with blocks and doing something in there, whether it's breaking things down or building it up or some time gated thing. But I do worry on more time gated things being in the game. Like we already have a lot of people annoyed at how long it takes copper to age down because they want to build with the color of copper they want. And then that's even more so now that they had to change the copper trapdoor recipe to work off and doors to work off of ingots instead of full blocks. So now you can only craft in 121 the base stage. You can only craft like stage 1, so the orange one. And then if you want to use stage 3 for the trapdoor, you have to lay them out to have them all aged down and everything. So I worry if they add more time gates like that to a game, that's gonna not be received super well, especially when the player has to be nearby. Like one, the chunk has to be loaded, and then two, for some of them, like a cactus farm, for example, cactuses only will tick update if the player's within, I think, 128 blocks. So I think a lot of these farms also work in a similar way. Of it, so it's kind of becomes a game of not being able to experience the world and spreading everything else out. Like what that's the way I love to play, at least, is like I love to build different villages throughout different places and go and visit those, and usually just have a lever that turns on a farm that goes super fast. But if you have more things that you just have to idle and kind of sit in the area, I think that would condense the player experience into a main base, like a mega base that we're already seeing a lot of people. And I feel like we're currently moving out of the mega base area and people are moving more into similar to how I play, because I think a lot of other content creators are starting to play this way of experience the world, because content creators a lot of times like, well, I built my base, now what the heck do I do? I have no content left. So now they're like, okay, then I go and build a new base, and then I connect the bases together and do all of that. So I love the idea of renewability for a lot of resources. If we can just add coral to the list too, coral blocks, that'd be great. But yeah, I think it just needs to be in a way that's player conscious instead of another time sink without some way to speed up the process.
I'm struggling to remember what block we were talking about, and it was either an email or something that Jonny brought up himself on one of the recent episodes, which was something where a time-intensive way would be one way to get the block, like the way that we craft concrete, like the way that we get dripstone. But then there would be another way that would be faster, but would yield less. So quick results equals you're not going to get as much per unit. In the same way that we talk about like the crafting recipe for stairs, and people get really nitpicky about it, when it should be just like one block in and one stair out, that kind of thing. As it happens in the stone cutter, right? And I think that it's one of those things where, like, if you can have the early game be like, well, you got to wait. But then it's even more rewarding when a new block becomes available to the player, or you have enough experience in the game where like, oh, I can build a farm now and I can make all kinds of this. And it does take some head time, but once I've done it, I'll be able to get as much as I want. And I think that's the thing. Like, if you can get it to a point where there's some time in from the player, but not time waiting around from the player. I don't know if people really mind building a redstone farm if the result of the redstone farm is like you never have to worry about gunpowder again. Like it's a satisfying twist. You don't have to sit there necessarily AFK all that long, but it's not waiting for gunpowder to grow on a tree, right? Like it's not that kind of boring. And I think some of that is just the way that video game players in general are going in the modern day, how Minecraft players have kind of changed the way they play the game. Like, I certainly treated Minecraft like a very chill experience. And I still do enjoy a chill session of Minecraft, but I'm busy building now, and I move around quickly, and I place a lot of blocks quickly. And it's not the same as when I was doing it earlier, because I was still taking the time to figure out how it all worked. So I didn't even mind crops growing in the background the old fashioned way because because it would take me that long to figure out how to build my next building. But now, I'm sure you experience this. I can start to put down a foundation of a house and get halfway done and realize, oh, that wasn't long enough for whatever it was I was waiting to do in the background to happen. Like just because you just get faster and more efficient at the game. And so you don't have necessarily that regional downtime. But yeah, I think that having something to balance there with calcite as renewable, because renewable seems to be the top of mind. We still get a lot of emails about renewable sand, other resources that are not renewable. We definitely get a lot of emails about those.
I think I am actually on the other side of that. Is before I get too much hate for this, I do like some materials like sand not being renewable, because I don't find it difficult to find a desert biome, and like the amount of time it spends to get it. I like those downtimes of I just have to sit here for a while and gather like a shulker of sand. Like I just need that as like, it's almost like a mental break. If I'm just gonna hold the shovel, I'm just gonna listen to the brr, 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 brr of all the sand breaking, and I enjoy those times. I enjoy going out in the world and doing that. Like I have a rule in my own world that I don't build auto tree farms. I don't build auto stone farms. I don't, unless it's a material that you can only really get in decent amounts through using some form of automatic farm. I actually prefer to go out in the world and do that. And once I finish cleaning up an area or like removing all the sand from a region in a desert, I will usually turn that into a build. I'll turn that into something else and then kind of like paint over the area that I absolutely devastated and turn it into something cool. So for me, I think there's a good balance between renewability versus actually playing the game, because if everything's renewable, for me, if everything's renewable, a lot of that's probably going to come through. Like villager trading is a great way of renewability right now, but the more time I have to spend with a menu open, I feel like takes away from my gameplay experience. I want to be playing the game. I don't want to be in a menu clicking a button.
I agree. And I think that's something that the crafter is going to help balance a little bit in terms of being in a menu briefly, setting up something cool, and then being able to come back and collect things more efficiently. And the wait time ending up being worth your while once you've like condensed things down from nuggets or ingots into blocks and all that kind of stuff. I feel like that time investment, like it's got to be a really delicate balance at Mojang to figure out how to maintain that spirit of one block at a time in Minecraft, and then also try to move the game forward and try to keep people that as they get older, as the average age of the Minecraft player inches into the 20s, people have less time and they can't spend 12 hours a week playing Minecraft like you and I do, or more. I'm sure you play a lot more than I do. The thing that I keep on coming back to, I'm like you, I don't mind collecting sand. Sand is not the first thing that I think about with renewable. It's the pain in the butt stuff like calcite. It's the stuff that's like way up in a mountain. It's not a giant biome. Like it's a little blip on the side of a mountain. And I hope you don't need too much of it, because you're going to probably use it if you're using it as a main building block. It'll go pretty fast. But I find that collecting sand for me, it's a beacon and a speed potion. And I just go like a reverse 3D printer and just like delete rows and rows and rows of sand. I find it very cathartic. It's very it's very organized. It's like the reverse of laying out Lego pieces. It's like Pac-Man. You just eat up the whole desert one row at a time, and I find it very satisfying. Less so when you run into a lot of sandstone, because of course the shovel doesn't necessarily go through that very quickly. So but yeah, I haven't done that in a while, because like once you get a couple of shulker boxes of sand, like unless you're using it all the time and smelting it all into glass or something, then you're not. And really, with, as you mentioned, villagers, if glass is what you need, then keep your sand for your concrete production and for when you actually need sand, and get your glass from villager trades and stuff like that, even though it does, put you in a menu. Well, this week I thought it would be fun to take advantage of having another builder on the show to pick fWhip's brain about the new blocks in Tricky Trials. It's been out for about a month now. And I wanted to talk about things like, what do we think of the new blocks that are available? What are the go-to uses? How are we thinking about integrating them into existing builds or block palettes? As a quick refresher for anybody that wants to know, the crafter and the heavy core, chiseled copper, copper grates, doors, trapdoors, and the copper bulb. tough stairs, slabs, and walls, polished tough and tough bricks in stairs, slabs, and walls, and chiseled tough bricks are the blocks that came out with the new update. So mostly copper stuff and mostly tough changes and additions. I shouldn't say changes. It's all additions. It's all new stuff. So right to you, fWhip. How have you been using the new blocks?
I'm very endgame in my hardcore world. I just hit day 7,100. I started it back in 118, so I've been in here seeing so many new blocks coming in, so it's fun to kind of compare these new ones and see like old builds I've done and being like, do I want to go rework it, or do I want to like preserve it as a time capsule of where it is there and then start working on with the new blocks moving forwards? Everything that they added in for 121, I am in love with. I think they're all fantastic. Tough was the perfect transition, going from your stone and your cobblestones to tough and then into deep slate. And then in there, you can jump into blackstone if you really want to go all the way. But before, we kind of only had the one tough full block and we had acacia planks, or not planks, the bark, the acacia log bark texture on the outside as kind of a gray tone. And so the tough now, I love. I think it adds to this like almost dark fantasy vibe that is really, really cool. That I think is before, a lot of our stone builds were very bright and kind of shiny, or they were really dark in the deep slate. So I like having that transition and that middle tone in between. I think that's awesome. I think it's super fun. I've been using the tough and like the just the slabs and walls that come with that a lot in building trees. I think when you break it down into walls, similar to how you see people use diorite walls to build birch trees and things like that, I think the tough can actually lend pretty well towards like a pine tree or like some sort of things in there. You can add it into like acacia trees that you're making. So I think that's really versatile. The tough bricks I think are pretty cool. And then those two like additional ones, I always call one the lasagna block. You probably know which one I'm talking about.
I do, yeah.
I couldn't tell you what it's actually called, but I love that as like a detail, like a trim along a building, or if you're building like a little kind of retaining wall that's like 1 or 2 blocks tall, like putting the brick on the bottom and then that on the top and then some like slabs on top of that or something is pretty cool. I haven't yet found a heavy core. I have not been lucky. I've cleaned out 6 trial chambers now, all of the vaults inside of them, and I haven't got a heavy core. So I haven't actually looked at that in game yet, because I have that rule that I mentioned earlier. If I don't go in snapshots, because I want all the stuff to be fresh, and I don't like spawning that stuff in creative until I've found it in my actual world. But for the crafter, though, I think it's super cool. The side texture that has like the little lever on it, that I think it actually animates when the crafter is being used. But if you put 2 of those sideways towards each other, they actually make a really cool 2-wide cupboard. They look like big like doors that you could open for them, which is fun. And then the grid on top can be very sci-fi, like a board or something like that, or like buttons that you could have, which is cool. And then the upside down texture, like the bottom texture, is really cool if you turn it on its side, because it's directional for the crafter where it's going.
Right.
So you can actually get that for some walls. And again, using that as like a trim around things, I find I like a lot. And then I think the back has like that little like gray stone or almost like an iron like support in the middle, and then also the framing on it. And that I've used in a few factory buildings that just have like some oak planks or something, and it blends really well with that, and making it look almost like it's like steel reinforced or something, trying to make the factory just look a little bit stronger and more mechanical and industrial, I think is. So I've been loving them. I absolutely love all the new blocks. My community just is constantly saying I'm just addicted to tough blocks, because every time I'm building something now, I'm like 8 buildings in a row. I'm like, what if we just added some tough in here? Like, I think it could be really cool to add some tough in this. Like, it'd be great. So it's just turning in every build. Every single one I make is tough of some sort in it now.
I'm holding off on finishing the basement of my keep, because on the inside I want to use the tough bricks and different tough blocks, and I want it to look kind of musty, and it's got that little bit of a green tinge to it, almost like a teal. So I'm looking forward to getting into that. With the crafter, I wish other blocks, like other profession blocks, were as directional as the crafter. Just like the barrel gives you all kinds of options, I think it would be great if something like the cartography table or I mean, maybe not.
Exactly what I thought of.
Yeah, maybe not the fletching table, but there's a couple of other um, tables like the smithing table that, I mean, you can use the tops and the bottoms for ceilings and floors, but if you wanted to use the top for a wall from the smithing table, that would be so cool. And because
Mhm.
it wouldn't just be a wall, you could use it as like a fastener. You could make it look like one of those like the orc buildings in World of Warcraft, where they have those big metal strapping pieces that go around the logs and make them look really, really solid and heavy
Mhm.
and reinforced. And so that kind of stuff would be really cool. But when it comes to the new stuff, I mean, we haven't updated the Citadel, so I don't have any hands-on experience. But I just think about how I'm going to be using the new blocks in a way that's integrating them into my existing texture decisions. Like you said, West Hill is very gray and it's very medium gray, between 30
Mhm.
and 40% kind of gray. There are some darker spots because, of course, about midway through West Hill, Deep Slate became available. So some of the lower parts of tall buildings like the Keep near the river, there's a lot of deep slate. Try to use deep slate in the cliffs where I can. No wets, make it look like whetstone. Anything to make it look like not the default Minecraft gray. And so I'm looking forward to again using the tough, but then I'm also thinking like, well, how can I make this blend with my existing, not just like the existing textures from Minecraft, but my existing style, like how I made the
Mhm.
decisions for West Hill based on the block palettes available at the time, and a rule to make sure I'm not doing this for 5 years is to not go back and rebuild stuff. Like if I've already done it and I've made the decision, then I'm not going to go back and add in tough bricks where they would not have been 2 years ago. So there have been a couple of things that I have been putting off in order to update to 1.21, but it's not like I'm sitting around doing nothing. I have other things that I can do, like grass fields and paths and things that don't involve any of the new blocks from 1.21. I'm curious. You mentioned that you had emptied out a couple of trial chambers. Have you mined one out yet? Because that's a great way to get a lot of copper that's already aged that you don't have to wait for.
I mined the first one that I got. I mined out about half of it, and I ended with 4 shulker boxes of copper blocks. I found this ridiculously massive trial chamber on my first one,
Nice.
and I didn't take out any of the tough because I was like, I don't really need that many tough bricks. Like tough brick, I'm not using in mass quantities, so I was like, I don't care about clearing all that stuff out. But yeah, I took everything from the copper for probably about half of it and ended up with 2 shulker boxes full of oxidized copper, a whole shulker box full of waxed copper, and then another shulker box just full of stacks of like grates and chiseled and all those, like the cut copper and all the different types in there and everything. So yeah, no, I'm very very happy about that. That was as soon as I cleared the first trial chamber, I was like, I know I use a lot of copper too, and I instantly was just like, yep, I'm taking all this. Like I'm taking as much as I could. I gave myself like an hour and a half to mine it. I was like, yeah, we filled 4 shulkers. Like this is good. I'm out of here. So yeah, it's really cool having those, and I love that the trial chamber, like the functionality of it, still exists. So you don't really get that boring time ever so often of, oh, I'm just mining and nothing's gonna happen. Like as soon as you kind of get into
Right.
that lull period, then it's gonna activate again, and you're like, all right, time to clear all the spawners in this room I'm in. So yeah, I like it a lot. I think the trial chambers are a really really good addition to the game. I hope they keep updating them too. Like I hope this isn't just like a one-off. Okay, we did trial chambers and we're moving on. Like I hope they take that idea and continue it further, whether it's adding more loot to the existing loot tables or new versions of trial chambers to add new things. I think would be a great way to keep gameplay very active and keep players wanting to go out and doing more things.
If somewhere down the line they added a new hostile mob and then that hostile mob had its own spawner added to the trial chambers as part of the challenge,
Mm-hmm.
and then you would have two tiers of that, right? Like you'd have the ominous tier and then you'd have the regular tier. I think that's a
Yeah.
nice break kind of built into, you're hanging around and mining out an area, and then every so often the spawners reset, and you can say, I can take a break from like mining block after block after block and just go and however long it takes. I guess it depends on the size of your trials chamber and how long you
Mm-hmm.
want to spend doing it, but 5-15 minutes, like whatever it is, just kind of like shake out the sillies and then go back to mining the stuff that you need.
Yeah.
When it comes to working in things like tough and the new copper blocks, like I know that you mentioned you're using a lot of the regular tough and not so much much the bricks. But when you are thinking about bringing it into existing palettes or like existing go-to palettes that you have you run into any spots where it's either been challenging or some happy accidents or surprises? You're just like, oh, I didn't realize that tough was going to go so well with, insert Minecraft block here.
Um, I feel like one I was pretty surprised by was I really like how the tough, like the whole palette from the bricks, the polished, and the regular work with dead coral. I
Okay.
think it's mostly the brain coral, which has like the bigger circles on it. I know some people don't really like seeing all the holes and everything in it, so I try and use it pretty sparingly. But I was pretty surprised about how well those work together and kind of bringing those in because I always felt that the coral blocks were like a little too warm tone for cobblestone and everything.
Agreed.
But because tough kind of has that little like a different tone to it, I find it works pretty well. So that's been fun to work out. Haven't really tried it too much with the I feel like I used the tough like full block a lot before. Um so I already used tough a lot and now I just kind of have more ways of putting it in other places together. So yeah, I feel like I've used it a good amount, but I've been really enjoying having the different ones to work with. And basically, I'm really limiting myself. Like you're saying, you don't want to rework things. I'm in the same way as well, but I have had a few sections that before just were a little too busy, but they were the best that I could do at the time because I wanted something really structured for like a wall block on the corner to kind of round it. So I used like the stone brick wall but the rest of the build was a little bit darker tone but it didn't make sense to do like the deep slate brick wall because that was too dark. So now I'm like looking back at those, I'm like, well, this tough brick wall is kind of perfect for the middle. So I'm allowing myself to go back and do some of those, but I'm very much thinking about just like tearing up the entire road in the city that I'm working on, like the road, like the main road, and replacing it with tough, just because it would be a little bit darker and it would kind of contrast a bit better with the buildings around. Because right now it's a little lighter than the buildings, whereas that would shift it to be slightly darker because a lot of like brick and granite and everything. But yeah, I think there's a lot of things that I can still explore and find ways to use them. I think a lot of like the light gray terracottas and concretes and concrete powders and the white, and then you can kind of move into the whites from there. I think are going to be some stuff that I want to start messing around with more. But yeah, I feel like the tough materials really just kind of fit in the point that as soon as I was already using tough in, now I just have more blocks that can fit in there and add a little bit more texture and variety and just extra shapes to be able to work with.
I know in the past you've often shared that you've got like a personal texture pack that you have in the world where you've gotten tweaks
Mm-hmm.
made to existing textures to make them work better with what you're doing. It sounds like you're such a big fan of the new blocks that you probably haven't made any changes to them. Have you adjusted
Yeah.
any of your existing textures, like from your existing texture pack, to like go better with the tough?
So back in actually about when I started this world, if not a little bit before, so in 1.18 release, I removed every single texture that I had in the pack that wasn't foliage based. And all I've done
Okay.
for the leaves is turning them into like the bushy leaves. They're just a little bit fluffier. And then I went through and did variations for all of the flowers. So each flower, when you place it down, there's like 4 or 5 variations for them. And the only thing that I've ever like completely fully overhauled was the allium. I turned into more of like a heather plant, just to be a little bit fuller because I just never really liked the allium. I get what it was, but I always just felt so small in there. So I reworked it to be a little bit of a larger plant. But yeah, outside of that, once all the new textures came out that Joppa was working on, that was about when I was starting to think about removing all of them. And yeah, so I've been just loving the vanilla textures, and I just have the flowers because I think it makes my world a little bit more unique. I still have all the default variants except the allium in there that can pop up, but some are just like 2 flowers in a single point, or maybe 3 like baby like dandelions or something like that. So
We have a
yeah.
I think it's a mod on the Citadel, same thing. It's either a bunch or the single. And it just based
Hmm.
on whatever block value they have. It's the
Yeah.
same value that determines whether the grass is in the middle of the block or on the side of the block or whatever. And
Mm.
what I like so much about the little data pack that we have on the Citadel is that it also affects flower pots. So if you put a pot down and you put the flower in, you've got like a 50-50 chance of like it's either going to be a single flower or it's going to be like a bouquet. And it can
Oh,
really
fun.
help fill out a window, and it's based on height too. So like if you put it on the ground and you get the single flower, if you put it in a flower box one block higher, you might get the double. So it's always worth checking.
Mhm.
And so it's again, like it's not like a I always get what I want button, but it's like it's the kind of thing where like I have to check this. I'm going to check to see
Yeah.
where are all the blocks that give me a bunch of tulips as opposed to a single tulip, and I'm going to work my garden around where I get the bulk of the flowers. And I find it really helps make the world look more natural. Like I feel like when you
Oh,
have the
yeah.
same flower everywhere or the same bush everywhere, same blade of grass, it does get a little bit repetitive, and you can kind of see the Minecraft grid kind of coming through. Something that I
Mhm.
use a lot on the show is like anytime I can break the grid, I really like the pink petals for that. For lining the edges of things, edges of gardens and paths, anything to kind of get a curve or something that looks like that's not on the same grid of squares that everything else is. I find that that's really helpful in creating something in Minecraft that looks a little bit more natural. Before we move on, one thing I wanted to touch on was the paintings, because I know, again, back in the day, you had some custom paintings that also had different textures for utilities and kitchen decorations and things like that.
Yeah.
Uh, are you excited about the new paintings as vanilla textures? Like, are you planning to use them as they are, or do you look at them and think like, well, there might be some place that I might want to add something new?
The paintings that I was using as well, they all broke because of a bug. There was an old feature in the resource packs that Mojang has acknowledged that the bug is a bug and not intentional, where paintings used to be able to support transparent pixels. So yeah, I had things like hanging pots that you could throw in a kitchen on one of the two wide paintings, or one of the one wide paintings was like a bunch of knives held up on something for like just cooking knives or something in there.
Yeah.
Um, and I love those. I miss those for sure, but they were starting to feel a little too non-vanilla. So I transitioned back because I found I was getting more questions than not from the audience of being like, where'd you get those pots and pans from? So if I wasn't a content creator, I probably would still be using something like that. But as a content creator, I think it's easier just sticking more in the vanilla realm. I think all these new paintings they added are really cool. I found a few of them that I've loved using. I like that they added an odd width ones, being like the 3 wide paintings. I wish they had, instead of the 3 by 3, I wish they had done a 3 wide, 2 high painting. Like that would have been really cool to have something in there, because I find some of the larger paintings that they do, they're just a little too big for like the sense of scale that I like in my Minecraft world. So any painting that's really above a 2 by 2, I'm probably not gonna use. But I love like the double villager one they added in. Like I think that one's just so goofy. It's so good. The new like 1 wide, 2 tall one they have of the person on the horse, or the horse bucking. Like I think that one's really cool. Um, yeah, I think they did a really good job. A lot of like the 1 wide ones, the 1 by 1 of like the little rows in there. That yeah, I think they're really cool, and they made me want to start using paintings again. It was again another one of those things in Minecraft that I just kind of forgot existed because I just didn't really enjoy using them. So it was never really in my detail brain, because I think it was more that I was finding myself using the same like 3 or 4 paintings everywhere because they were the ones that I liked, and then I was using those 3 or 4 paintings everywhere. And then I was like, I'm just using these too much. Like I gotta stop. And then I just kind of forgot that they existed instead of remembering, oh, maybe I should try these again. So I think that has been fun to have something new to mess around with. But I wish paintings were a little bit more efficient, because they're all entities, in the same way that banners, and I'm sure you know with all of the custom models and item frames and everything like that, it can get a little laggy if you put a bunch of them in. So for my own world, I try and keep it very lag friendly, because I want it to be going on for a long time, and I don't want to ever go back and be like, all right, I got to clear some stuff out of here. So I try and limit how many of those entity based things that I add in, but sometimes there are some good spots where like just like one of those new paintings is like, all right, it's gonna fit perfect here, so we gotta do it.
I like the ones that look like they are part of Minecraft, like they fit the same kind of
Hmm.
Japa texture aesthetic. If they go too far outside of that, if they're a meme or if they're just a scan of
Yeah.
somebody else's very odd taste in oil painting, I'm just like, nah, it's not really my thing. I do like you. I
Hmm.
like the ones that look like a someone painted a Minecraft landscape or the rose or the poppy, like that kind of stuff. I do, however, have a custom texture pack for the paintings, the original set of paintings, and it's my friend Brit's art, and she did some some, I don't want to say conceptual, it was like abstract type stuff. So it's not necessarily a picture of anything in a lot of ways, but you can get away with them in like a modern city to put like art on like the wall of a bank or an apartment building entrance, like that kind of stuff. So I'm curious to see what I might be able to come up with in terms of either promoting another artist or doing something like that. But I also like the idea of using custom textures in maybe my sci-fi area for like the one time you really want like a digital panel to open up a door or just something that looks like a
Yeah.
but then like I'm also someone that has an artistic background, and maybe I can come up with something where yeah, it looks like a cool like knobs and dials and monitor screen from like the 1950s, and then maybe I can put like an 8-bit picture of a villager or something on it, just like to kind of keep that Minecraft vanilla spirit, but then not go too crazy with it. But in the
Hmm.
same realm, I don't want to end up with like, how'd you get that? Like all the questions that you'd get in
Yeah.
chat as a content creator. So I don't deal with paintings very much because I don't find I can use them. I also find it frustrating to actually put them down to get the one that you want. And now that there's so many,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I feel like that's a thing that could be improved. I wish that they would do something where they would go down like a trapdoor. Like you'd be able to place them either on a flat surface on the ground or on a ceiling, and then you could just use them for whatever purposes that you want, and they would just kind of like go where you place them, and you would just choose the one. I'm not sure how or what mechanic would be implemented for that, but the fact that there's like RNG when you're trying to place stuff in a creative game, I find very frustrating,
Yeah.
and so I don't tend to use them
Or
very
you have to
often.
like box off your area, be like, no, I only want the 2x2, so I'm surrounding everything around it with temporary blocks so I can only get the 2x2 options. I will say those four paintings they added a long time ago. I don't know if you remember them, that are only accessible through commands.
Yes, I do
They're
remember
like
those.
it's like a water and earth, or like seem like symbols from Avatar: Last Airbender. Like I want them to still add those survival. I don't get why they were left as creative only. Like they're added in. Like come on now, just let me get access to them. I'm so tempted to make like a texture pack or something, or a data pack that would get those accessible in game.
That's the kind of painting that I would associate with Minecraft, and I think that's really
Yeah,
flexible. You can kind of use it wherever. It works in a medieval setting, it works in a modern setting. You can put it in any of your builds and it's going to look cool. And they added really nice colors to them. They were really well done. Like I agree with you. I think those were a really, really cool tease. I would say addition, but they're not, they never really made it. Well, folks, that wraps up this episode of the Spawn Chunks. You can find more information about the show and links to some of the things that fWhip and I talked about at thespawnchunks.com. The music for the show was composed by Pixel Riffs. The Spawn Chunks is proud to be a listener-supported podcast. If you get value out of the show, why not consider putting some value back in? Visit patreon.com/thespawnchunks to join the community, where pledging at any level will get you an invite to the patron-only Discord chat and the opportunity to participate in things like the live show recording, as well as the monthly Minecraft audio hangout that I mentioned earlier today. We currently have 319 patrons. That's down a little bit from last week, which means that there's always room for more. Special thanks to our content engineer patrons, Gundar H. Striker, Hunter 555, Jumbo Sale, Mind Trip Media, Party Voyager, and Yitz. Sharing the podcast with your friends is the easiest way to support the show. It's free. Just tell a friend about the podcast and how they can listen to it. You can find us at The Spawn Chunks on social media. New episodes are available on Mondays on all of the major podcasting platforms. Contact the show at spawnchunkmail@gmail.com and find the RSS feed on thespawnchunks.com, as well as the patron-only RSS feed on the Patreon page. That's where you can listen to the render distance, the extended version of the podcast. fWhip, thank you so much for filling in for Jonny as he travels the globe. Really appreciate you being here, man.
thank you so much for having me. It's awesome. I'd as always love to have some time to sit down and geek out about Minecraft. Can't go wrong.
If people want to geek out with you in Minecraft, where can listeners find you and the things that you're doing online?
99% of what I'm doing is over on YouTube. Just search for fWhip, FWHIP. You'll find me over there. I started multi-streaming, and so I'm live on Twitch as well, usually 2 or 3 streams a week, but still 99% of what I'm doing is over on the YouTube side. That's where you can find me in the blocky world.
And we'll have links to all of that in the show notes as well this week. Speaking of the show notes, we'll have links to the Minecraft Survival Guide, which is, of course, on youtube.com/pixelriffs. There are a couple of pre-recorded videos set to publish while Jonny is away. So check out Pixel Riffs on all the social media that matters and link back to YouTube to see what has been posted there. My name is Joel Duggan. You can find everything that I'm doing online at joelduggan.com. That includes a link to the Citadel Cafe, my other podcast about sci-fi and fantasy entertainment. Episode 482 just came out this weekend. Steven and I talked about the 2023 film Tetris, as well as where I am in the Acolyte watch through. I think we're on episode 6. There's only 2 more left. So I was giving my thoughts about how that show is going. I'm Joel Duggan on social media, very easy to find, and Joel Duggan on Twitch, where I now stream Wednesday through Saturday. The Sunday stream has moved. I'm working on Westdale, of course, on the Citadel server, and on Fridays, I'm doing a live Lego stream, and for the first time, I'm building one of my Minecraft builds in Lego. It was designed by community member Grandpa Crafter, and it is the main gate of Westdale. I started it last week, so you can check that out over on my YouTube channel, which is Joel Duggan VODs. Thanks for visiting the Spawn Chunks. The world outside is infinite, and the key is knowing where everything is.